Welcome to Prime Suspects, alongside Adam Bjorn and Prime Sports co-founder Joe Brennan Jr. I'm your host, Matt Landis. Adam, you attended yesterday's Steelers win over the Vikings. How was the NFL scene in Dublin?
It was phenomenal. It brought me back to Colombia versus Ecuador in Brazil for the World Cup. Like neutral venue, full of, it was like they just took the Pittsburgh Stadium and went and planted it in Dublin because those towers were swinging and it just looked pure Pittsburgh. Atmosphere, I'd heard conversations from other people saying they've been to the UK games. They see, 30 different jerseys, and there's just not the atmosphere like it was yesterday. But I'm sure as hell there'll be more games in Dublin. That was an experience for any sports fan to go and sort of watch and see. And, maybe it's a Steelers' new home place to spend a game or two each season.
And beyond the international series, how were the NFL Week 4 results for both Prime Sports and BetCris?
It was a mixed week. New Jersey had good NFL, bad college football, lost to the Masters, beat the Rex, so a bit of rob Peter to pay Paul syndrome this week. Good soccer, good baseball, but great tennis. Funny enough, tennis was a sport this week that's, was really good in New Jersey. Ohio, crap college football, great NFL. Live sucked. Funny enough, they got crushed on live soccer. So, it was a mixed bag everywhere. And then Arizona, phenomenal results. Football was great, baseball not so much. But there was a eclectic collection of results this week, which is good. We're seeing broad volume across all the sports, results up and down across the week, not just the Saturday, Sunday. And that's got what we're kind of looking for is, throw in a bit of golf as well this weekend. But, I'm currently sitting in my sixth country in 9 days, and it's just been nonstop sport, variations, at least 20 to 25 Guinnesses drunken in my 41 hours in Ireland. Saw some horses as well, dropped off at the golf sales on the way. It was one hell of a week.
Yeah, sounds like you're making the most of the entire experience. And I want to zoom out a bit beyond football in a bit, but a quick follow up. When I heard you say Ohio college football was crap, my first thought was Ohio State won and covered in dominant fashion against Washington. When I heard you say Arizona football is good, I think back to the Cardinals losing and not covering on Thursday Night Football to kick off the NFL Week 4 slate. Is it a fair assumption that in a lot of these markets, if the major local teams do well, then that will bode poorly for you? And if the major teams do poorly, then it will bode well for you on your side of the counter?
Generally, that hasn't been the case, but I did dive into this week just to sort of have a look. And yes, the results you just said were sort of fitting. Generally, we're going to get mainly Masters versus Rex, although Arizona, we do have a solid recreational foundation getting built there. Yeah, it's just sort of a balance of everything. And it just happened that, yes, those games didn't go as planned or did go as planned, depending on which one it was. But as I said, it's getting where I'm actually, I guess, excited a little bit about the business we're bringing in and the fact that it's spread across. Ohio, we had our typical Ohio player have a really, 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 really good week. It would have been nice for Dallas to get across that touchdown line there in overtime, would have made the completely different week. We're on the precipice of having some results fall our way that'll, shoot us into the direction we're really hoping for. But it's getting a lot better, not just because results are kind of getting there. The underlying bets that we're seeing coming in, the positions where again, we're a point here and there from having phenomenal results one week. It's just building, as I said, brick by brick, slowly but surely. NFL season, we're in now, the middle of this busy time. World Cup next year, so there's no real downtime in the summer, and then football season next year. It's hopefully heading in the right direction, and by, let's call it April 2027, we'll know exactly where we're at.
And to your point, football has plenty of company on the sporting calendar these days. So, how were the results for the Ryder Cup as well as the conclusion of pennant races across Major League Baseball?
I mean, golf was its own phenomenal sort of for the week, not so much in the betting side of it, although the betting side was good. It's generally good when a favorite gets beat, especially when it's an American favorite. But yesterday afternoon or yesterday evening or whenever the hell it was, sitting in bar and dinner in Ireland full of Europeans, the negativity that started coming, this is over, how the hell did we lose this thing, to then having one of their own, an Irishman, sink the putt to retain it. It was, again, just the place erupted, people chest bumping all over the place. It just topped off what was somewhat of a phenomenal day. And then, yeah, Ryder Cup forever and ever. I've always been on the European side. It's nothing better than sort of taking those American golfers down a notch or two. They nearly come back. Thank God they didn't. But, perfect result in the end.
All right, well, Adam, I'll reel you back into some stateside conversation before we completely lose our American audience. Because while we had plenty of ground to cover in our first segment, we've also got a twin bill in our second segment. And we'll lead off sticking with you, Adam, with the news that Kalshi has taken a page out of the 90s playbook of offshore operators when arguing last week that accepting bets from a jurisdiction doesn't mean it does business there. Several tribes accuse Kalshi of unlawfully offering sports betting on their lands in violation of the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, while Kalshi denies the claims. How'd this argument go for the offshore world a few decades ago, and how do you think it goes for Kalshi given the state of our current landscape?
All right, let's be clear. The fix is in when it comes to Kalshi. I think it's very clear the fact that they got lawyers there right now that are supposedly going to be the head of. I mean, did anyone see the South Park episode last week? I mean, come on now. This is like it's all over. This is going to be here. It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. But yeah, like make up the rules for what you need at any given time to sort of participate in things. I mean, does that just mean if we take our servers and we go stick them on a big tanker out in the middle of international waters and we're just taking our bets, then technically we're not taking from anywhere. They're just out there in space. Or maybe that's what we do. We partner with the airline and we put, Starlink up in the atmosphere somewhere and our bets go and get taken up there. Does that mean that, we're good to go? We're not actually taking them from Earth. They're just in the atmosphere somewhere. So ultimately, it doesn't really count where you take the bets from. I mean, it's insanity. I mean, we've seen it for a very long time. Lawyers do what lawyers need to do and just trying to put together the case for whoever's paying them. And then if they get paid by the other side, they'll just flip as quickly as anything else and say, well, no, what I said over there wasn't actually correct. This is correct. So, I mean, grab the popcorn, sit back. I'm sure this is a lot more in Joe's wheelhouse and he'll lay it out for us in a nice, cleaner manner. But come on now, it's getting very farcical, as we've said for a long time. But hey, this is what they do.
If I might inject a note with a little less cynicism, that was actually an argument that people were able to make in the United States prior to 2013, which is when New Jersey legalized online casino. And, when you look at the Wire Act, when you look at the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act, particularly that second one, UGA, what it really comes down to is it's not one thing or the other. It is where the bet originates and where the bet is accepted, treat the legality of that transaction. So there actually is there's some precedent for these things now. And I don't think Kalshi can necessarily go back to the future in order to make this a winning argument. This really isn't Kalshi's winning argument. And I do think it's kind of ridiculous that they're asserting it. But then again, Kalshi seems to be throwing everything in the kitchen sink out there behind them in order to do this, when I will agree with at least some of what Adam said cynically, which is they're being permitted right now. The administration, the CFTC, there's no indication that they're going to reel Kalshi in anytime soon. And honestly, I was surprised by some of the comments from the judges in the Third Circuit Court of Appeals in Philadelphia who are hearing the matter between Kalshi and the state of New Jersey right now, where I was a little surprised, at least how these comments read, that they're more inclined to allow CFTC really to set the terms of engagement here right now. So I think Kalshi makes it harder on themselves when they make this kind of argument regarding tribal lands and the bet is wherever we say it is. They have stronger arguments that they can potentially make in their favor.
Well, Joe, sticking with you and speaking of topics that can trigger a cynical response, Chicago is considering adding a 50-cent tax on every bet placed within city limits, and a move it projects could generate $17 million. This comes on top of a new and controversial tax rolled out across Illinois in July that brought in $5.2 million in tax revenue through its first months. What do you make of a city looking to add a tax to sports betting, and what precedent could this set for taxes applied at a local level?
First of all, since I moved Joe Brennan Jr. out there to work for a summer internship, it seems like Illinois has gone absolutely nuts when it comes to sports betting. There couldn't be more bad faith right now in government. They are a textbook example of this. You had Governor Pritzker and the state legislature add their 25 to 50 cent surcharge at the state level. And now with the Chicago City Council saying that they're going to add an additional surcharge, they really are hastening the demise of regulated sports betting in their state. I've heard people say like, well, you see lots of municipalities, they levy charges on things like the best example is when you look at hotel rooms, because it's all like, let's stick it to the visitors kind of thing. So when we all descend on Las Vegas here in a couple of weeks, if you actually look at your hotel bill, the number of city charges, state charges, and things like that are tacked on to your hotel bill is actually kind of ridiculous. But I guess the counter argument to that is like, okay, imagine that you had two high roller suites at Wynn Las Vegas right next to each other. And one had all of the state and city municipality taxes tacked onto it. And the other one didn't have any of it tacked onto it. Which room are you going to stay in? And so obviously what we're doing is we're making a comparison between regulated gaming and the unregulated gaming, either the aforementioned Kalshi and company, or the sweeps, or offshore, or the street bookies. And so this intention of like, okay, well, let's see how much further down we can go and continue to tack on these fees. It's in some ways, the way the industry lobbied after New Jersey, after Pennsylvania, where they talked about sports betting in regards to our handle numbers, not our hold numbers. So lawmakers don't understand what the financial funnel is in our industry. And they think that there's billions out there to tax, and there really isn't. And this punching up on the guys obeying the rules, when even the guys obeying the rules now are getting some pretty sweet looking alternatives, right? Just when you look at what's going on with CFTC. So this really is, we're not even 8 years in to the post-PASPA era, and lawmakers at all levels just seem intent on choking the shit out of the golden goose. And if Chicago City Council goes ahead and does this, of course, you're going to see other municipalities do this. My hometown of Philadelphia, one of the biggest killers of business in the city is the city's wage tax, which if you're a professional athlete and you play against the Eagles or the Phillies or the Flyers or the Sixers, you come through town, the city of Philadelphia sends you a tax bill against your salary, your yearly salary, for that 1 or 2 games that you played in Philadelphia. It's a joke. You better pay it though, because it's amazing what they'll do to claw that money away. But it's a disincentive for people to use the product. It's a disincentive for people to visit and do business in Philadelphia. And tacking on municipality fees, county fees, whatever it may be, onto the existing rising state tax fees, again, it's just going to be a disincentive. You're punching up on the guys who are obeying the rules, and you're just creating an incentive to allow the public to swing their support behind stuff like Kalshi and sweeps and offshore guys, and reacquainting themselves with their corner bookie.
All right, from taxes at a local level to opening lines garnering interest on a national level, Adam, what's the most noteworthy action you're seeing so far across Week 5 in the NFL?
So there's pretty much 4 games. Funny enough, Saints Giants are the ones that are getting heavy action both ways too. You got Giants at -1, -1.5, Saints at +1, +1.5, and even some big bets at bought up to +2.5, which was odd. Seahawks saw early action. They were sort of 3 dog, and now they're 3.20 favorite 20. They sort of saw plenty of action come their way. KC and Jacksonville's been a really good 2-way action. There was some that bought down to KC 2.5. Actually, I don't know, that number felt a little bit light. And then the Colts, they opened 6, went heavy 6.5, got plenty at 7. And then we're starting to see some comeback at the +7 on the Raiders, but there was a few that actually bought it up to 8, again, oddly enough. So those are the 4 games that have gotten the heavy action early on. And then tonight's game, massive money on Denver, looking at sort of over 80% of the money. However, the master money on the other side is about 75% that. So while I still have, I believe, 1 or 2 of my survivors riding on Denver tonight, yeah, the data's really showing that I should be on the underdog in that game.
I find it interesting that of the 4 games you highlighted, 2 of them had peculiar cases of lines being bought up to seemingly trivial numbers in 2 and 8. And I'm wondering if you're seeing that more these days, given the longer extra point, coaches' fourth down decisions. Maybe we're seeing fewer field goals when teams get down into the red zone, and that could lead to more touchdowns, which could mean 6 points or 8 points, with 2-point conversion attempts being what they are these days. Is this more of a one-off, you think, with these couple of games you highlighted, or is that part of a bigger trend that you're just seeing given the way the NFL operates in 2025?
No, definitely seen more of it. I mean, I think even in the preseason, I highlighted like week 1 or something, how someone had bought sort of a pick'em game to 2 both sides. And obviously we have it where, some of those games can end up on ties, or a lot of them don't go for the extra point and they go for 2. So they don't, in situations like that. But there is a lot more of these odd buying moments that I've seen over the last 2, 3 weeks, is sort of looking and diving into these numbers a little bit further. I haven't dove in deep enough to see what it is why someone would buy from +1.5 to +2.5 for the Saints, or even why go to 8 instead of 7.5. Maybe it's just the math on those steps up that they just see isn't being charged enough by the house, so they just take that extra half hook as well. It's very odd, but for me, it was kind of, Saints Giants, they would come in hard there. It was a lot of bad games, it felt like yesterday, and that just seems like primed for 2 bad teams, while one of them had a big win yesterday. Seems like it's getting back to where the NFL was a bit last year, where there's a bit of parity. After 2 weeks saying Green Bay Packers was the best team in football, and there's some questioning that now. But it does seem like there's a lot more back and forth and bad teams that are sort of there at the end as well.
And pivoting briefly from the gridiron to the diamond, with Major League Baseball's postseason on deck, what are your most pivotal outcomes across Prime Sports and BetCris?
The Dodgers, they're sort of the biggest exposure, biggest loser across there. And then on the AL, well, there was that Detroit money, and then also the Red Sox money come in a little bit late. So that's sort of the teams we're not looking for. But once you get into September, there's less and less action on the baseball or football driven. But I'd hope that we see, a bit more action on that going over the next month.
And maybe we will. I'll use that as a way to transition into a fun, quick segment, putting you guys on the spot here. We got some positive feedback on our Super Bowl predictions a few weeks ago. So I thought maybe we could have some fun with World Series predictions on the eve of the postseason getting underway. So guys, the jump ball, whoever wants to jump in first, who wins the American League and National League pennants, who wins the World Series, and over under 1.5 seconds before we hear Joe utter the word Phillies.
Wow, you don't know me really well, because right now I wouldn't make that pick. The team of destiny seems to be Milwaukee. And, when you look across at the American League, it'd be really tough to imagine teams being able to, like when you go up to Seattle, they have a surprisingly tough home field advantage up there. That would be in the, one of the teams with the buys and everything like that. Plus they have what should be the American League MVP and the big dumper. But the problem with that is that would be a World Series that the networks and Major League Baseball would tear their hair out between Seattle and Milwaukee. So, yeah, but Milwaukee just seems like a team of destiny this year, and I'm going to really hate it because Mrs. Brennan's a Milwaukee Brewers fan.
And I had Seattle as well on that side. The only reason on the other side I'm looking at Cincinnati Reds is because I did actually somehow fall into them in some future markets back in May. So that's my only bet that I've had this year, and it's live, so I'll just have to try and ride that one home.
Okay, well, just like it was unanimous for us taking Buffalo out of the AFC for the NFL, it's unanimous taking Seattle out of the American League in baseball's postseason. My prediction before the season was Dodgers over Mariners, and go figure that between those teams, it's the Mariners bypassing the wild card round. Otherwise, I feel like that's aged about as well as I could have reasonably expected. I will say I'd love to see Seattle win its first championship, but if push comes to shove, I'll stick with the pick West Coast bias on full display and go Dodgers over Mariners. Now, guys, final topic this week, a jump ball for whoever wants to take it first. And we'll want to hear from each of you because the Global Gaming Expo, aka G2E, returns to Las Vegas next week. How would you frame up what your goals are heading into the conference, with whom you most look forward to connecting, and what you anticipate being the dominant themes of the week?
For me, being in a slightly different position than I've been in years past, I feel like I have, again, I've been pursuing that whole almost like, Joe Brennan's whistle stop listening tour of the American gaming industry here. One of the things that I'm interested in is to see, does any true innovation pop its head above water while we're at G2E? You now have all these alternative models that are popping up, whether it's sweeps or, obviously offshore. It's not like that's new to them. But, in addition to the regulated market, now you have prediction markets. So you do have these alternative models, but again, it just seems like everybody's just doing the same thing. If you're in sweeps, you still look like a sports book. If you're in prediction markets, you just look like a really shitty, simplistic sports book built on Angel Fire in the late 90s. So setting aside the legality of this stuff, or whether it's sustainable or any of those things, nobody seems to be really taking advantage of the opportunity to have like a little more, I don't know, like artistic freedom when they're in these alternate channels. It's just like, how much can we mimic the existing sportsbook product in order to suit our purposes? And we've talked a lot over now 101 episodes about how hard it is to innovate in the regulated industry. It's not so much when you're not regulated. And so it's an incredibly big disappointment. But my hope is that you'll see some young Turks who are going to say like, well, we're going to take advantage of this opportunity and we're going to do this. So I'm really looking for something that says, wow, a reimagining of what's going on and how to play real money sports games.
Adam, how are you approaching G2E?
So I had no intention of going. I was not going to go at all. It just didn't interest me. I miss Lisbon as well. However, I did receive one day of Penny Capital putting on an offsite with a few interesting topics. So that's pretty much what got me in. A couple of shout outs here. Guinness sponsored by TX Odds in Dublin. So I enjoyed that part of it. I'm looking forward to catching up with them at the Pepper Mill. Also the, NFL courtesy of Genius Sports, which have been an arch nemesis of mine for a long time. So, I look forward to catching up with them again. And then dinner provided by Extreme Push. So I need to dive into their product and start actually using it because we've been under contract for multiple years. So that's generally what G2E ends up being. It's any of these things. It's all the people that you need to catch up with sort of in one spot, shoot the shit about different things. I mean, G2E is kind of there's just so much. And I think I've posted recently my purposes of going there. Need to get some more customers. So got to go and see some of those affiliates. Processing as well. There's a couple of conversations there to sort of money in, money out. It's the number one thing in this game. So you've got to get that right. But yeah, generally it's just going in and looking at things a little bit differently. I've been, somewhat not changing my mind, but seeing things a little bit differently when it comes to what we're trying to do here, who we're supposedly competing with. And then again, there's just a massive gray market sitting in the US's. It's no longer offshore, it's onshore. So it's kind of, we've been playing the game right, I believe. We've built good relationships with the regulators. Now it's kind of time to fly a little closer to the sun, I think. And if these other places are going to be doing what they're doing and, the legislators and regulators are trying to do what they're doing and stick to their guns and try and move some of these things out, those are what the conversations are about now. It's just finding we don't have the marketing budget of the big boys. We don't have the unregulated aspect of the other ones. So what do we do in our sort of niche area and how can we get better and how can we just keep chipping away? And as I said earlier, it's been a number of years and we have this next 18 months in front of us that's just full of sports. And hopefully one of them's our sort of specialty of knowing football, knowing soccer, knowing Latin America, and sort of bringing that in to the fold and just having a good year next year. And I guess some of these conversations are just about solidifying what that journey is over the next 18 months. And getting the piece of the puzzle that we need and just keep building it out. Eat too much, drink too much, and just go home from Vegas needing to fast for 2 weeks and just go on a detox.
But when we go to the pepper mill, we're wide open. There's no eating the salad there.
Yeah, I think the one time I went to the pepper mill, I got an omelet and it had 10 eggs in it, unbeknownst to me. So that was several meals in one, but a legendary spot. Glad you guys have that to look forward to. We will go ahead and tie a bow around episode 101 of Prime Suspects to the audience, with full slates ahead, ranging from postseason baseball to college and pro football and more. Enjoy a wall-to-wall week in the world of sports. Thanks as always for tuning in, and we'll catch you next. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at PrimeSuspects_, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.